Mr. Chairman, kia ora tātou katoa.
Chris Okenvol.
I move that the question be now put.
Mita Ruranui. The Honourable.
Before I talk about particular aspects of this bill, in particular to Part 2, Clause 11, I just want to acknowledge the comments made by the previous speaker, Hone Harawira, because a lot of what he said is true. A lot of what he said is true. I don't have to be a coalition partner with anyone to recognise the truth, Mr. Hendare. Don't have to be a coalition partner to recognise the truth. But it's interesting, because I have a very long memory. And Mr. Harawira identified some of the issues that the Māori Party campaigned on 2005. And like I said, I've got a very long memory. And part of that, my memory, is a particular hui in Tauranga where the Honourable Georgina Tuhehe was present, the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta was present, I was present, and the candidate for Waiariki, now the member, was present. And we talked a lot about the technical issues of the 2004 legislation. And isn't it interesting, the very issues that we were challenged on as incumbent MPs are the very issues that are covered in Clause 11 of this particular bill. One of those issues was the issue of partnership. And we were actually, as incumbent members, Labour members at the time, had to admit were struggling for answers. Because there was an issue around partnership where people in our communities couldn't quite understand why we had accepted a piece of legislation that wasn't very clear about the partnership between Māori and the Crown. Well, I have to say, Mr. Chair, this bill is even less clear. It's even less clear because it transferred the relationship in the 2004 legislation from the between Māori and the Crown to Māori and this unidentified, undefined group of people called the New Zealand public. Well, Mr. Chair, my argument at this time supports that of the Hone Harawira is that when Māori signed the treaty in 1840, it was directly with the Crown. And although it's taken some time to us to accept and to understand the nature and extent of the relationship, we have, by and large, developed a level of confidence and trust in it. Now, for Māori, the question is, who are we dealing with now? Who are we dealing with when we sit down with the Crown officials, with the Crown representatives, government ministers, and talk about our customary rights? We're not really sure. So you might say we were right back to where we were in February 1840. Lack of trust, lack of understanding, lack of confidence, because that's exactly what this clause achieves. And at the Select Committee, Mr. Chair, it was clear that a vast majority of the submitters, most of them, if not all of them, were totally opposed to the Crown removal of ownership of the Takutai from Crown ownership, because it created an environment of uncertainty for Māori. And I'm wondering why the member for Waiariki can go out on the hustings and to promote this particular bill, which contains the issues that were of concern to him and his colleagues, including Hone Harawira, in 2005, and take ownership of it. Mr. Speaker, that's a very, very unusual move, and Māori, particularly in the central North Island, will not accept it. I'm sure the Honourable Georgina Tuhehe is aware of that particular meeting, because she was quite vocal at that meeting and also condemned particular parts of the 2004 bill. But that being as it is, Mr. Speaker, I have a long memory as a politician, but others have very short memories. And in fact, they hate to be reminded of statements they made at any time during their political careers. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chair. Well, isn't it interesting? The two people who have the most have interjected the most in this debate are the very two people who weren't present at any of those meetings, including the great hikua that come down the country, although they've got a lot to say about it. But I'll forgive them for that, Mr. Speaker. One of them just happens to be related to me. Well, Mr. Speaker, you can understand why the member for Tai Tokero, Hone Harawira, has all these issues with his former party colleagues of in the Māori Party. So, Mr. Speaker, I wonder if the Minister will take a call very soon and explain, for the benefit, not just for the benefit of the members in the South, but for the Māori communities in general, how this new relationship will work. You have parts of the Takutai and Moana, that means the dry land, which in Māori terms is part of the Takutai Moana. That's in where it's common, it's in Crown ownership. But where it's below the high water mark, in other words, the wet areas of the Takutai Moana, it's in public ownership. Well, that's how the bill describes it to us. Where does this relationship start, Mr. Chair?
Is that the member seeking another call?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Honourable.
You see, Mr. Chair, in this particular part, which is for many Māori communities, is actually the area of the bill that really requires some clarification. And I'm sure that, and I hope that the Minister does take the opportunity to clarify these points. The other point that came up at the Select Committee was this issue around the extinguishment of customary rights under the 2004 legislation. Given that many Māori were led to believe that customary rights, in terms of their customary rights, are abstract and didn't exist in law prior to 2004, apart from the fisheries settlement, which is pretty clear and they defined exactly what rights were extinguished. Because that's not very clear. And it's not very clear in this clause, part of the bill, part 2 of the bill, what rights are being restored as a result of the repeal of the 2000 legislation. I'm inviting the Minister to take the opportunity to clarify that, because I'm very interested. And so, Mr. Speaker, part 1 talked about codification of customary rights, but it also raised a whole lot of issues around the role of iwi in terms of applications to the High Court. Unfortunately, when you go to that level of the judicial system, everything else becomes codified in law. Tikanga becomes codified. Manakitanga becomes codified. Yes, it does. Yes, it does. When the High Court makes a decision around what tikanga or these customary practices are, it codifies them in law. And that's why Māori were determined that direct negotiations with the Crown was necessary, because rangatira ki te rangatira, there is an understanding about what each other means, what each other's values mean. Unfortunately, Māori aren't confident that codification through the High Court process is going to be consistent, or rather is going to be, it's a one-size-fits-all sort of approach. If you codify something in law, then that's what it is. To give you an example, Te Arawa will have a different definition of tikanga to Mātātua. And that's good. That's the diversity of the people that we deal with, we live with every day. Te Atiawa will have a different definition of what tikanga means to them, to Ngāti Toa, even though they live in the same geographic area. And so, Mr. Chair, that becomes a huge problem, particularly when the court, the High Court or any court makes a decision around what these terms actually mean. And for Māori, that locks us into an understanding of our own world that we're not comfortable with. And I'm sure the Minister may have, or would have thought about that. See, there are my whanaunga, Paul Quinn, will be aware that in Ngāti Awa, they're very, very rigid in terms of their definitions. And no law in the land is going to tell them any different. Well, if he's going to support this bill, then he's going to have to explain to them why he supported the codification of their practices for the sake, for political expediency. That will be very difficult for him to explain to them. Well, Tau Henare will have to do the same to his Ngāti Hine and Ngāti Wai people. But you see, Mr. Chair, that's the difficulty we have here. And that was the value of Apirana Mahuika would have said it himself in direct negotiations with Crown Ministers over the customary interests of Ngāti Porou on the East Coast. He sat down with the Crown officials, with Crown Ministers, and he told them what it meant for Ngāti Porou, and that was accepted. There was no argument about it. The Crown, however, said, this is our tikanga, and Ngāti Porou accepted that. You see, by mutual agreement, a deal was done, an outcome was achieved, and it was signed off, and the Minister had he's the fortunate Minister to have been able to sign it off. You see, Mr. Chair, that opportunity, that the value of that relationship is now gone, because now what we're talking about is codification. Everything that we once believed in as Māori will be, in particular where the Takutai Moana is concerned, will be codified in law. And that in itself is an extinguishment of our practices. Kia ora.
Chris Tremaine.
I move that the question be now put.
Honourable Nanaya Mahuta.